Hi everyone, John Poker Chip Friedberg here with another episode of Stacking Chips, your strategy source for the 2007 World Series of Poker, the Bellagio Cup, and the dozens of other events going on right here in lovely Las Vegas. Today is the start of the $50,000 horse event, which I am not going to play. I'm going to enjoy a nice day off and hopefully get outdoors and golf or something once we finish filming this video. But I have a great guest on today. He's one of the players that I've had just the most respect for out of anyone. He's by far, in my opinion, the toughest of any player to play against. And his name, of course, is Mike The Grinder Mizrachi. So we're going to have Mike Mizrachi on the show today to talk about his World Series, some of his accomplishments, and of course, how he does it, how he always gets chips and always makes it so deep, and why he's so scary to play against. Before we get to Mike, though, I just want to talk about one thing real quick. I want to talk about a hand that I played, which didn't quite bust me out of the $2,000 pot limit event, but certainly left me short stacked enough to where I pretty much was all my chips. I was in the big blind with pocket jacks, and the blinds were the blinds are 2 and 400, and I had I think I had around 8,000 or 9,000 in chips to start the hand. And anyway, so I'm in the big blind. There's a middle position raiser who raises to about 1,200. And actually, he raised it to 1,000. He raised it to 1,000, and he's a pretty straightforward player. He really plays ABC poker. This guy, where he usually raises with a big pair or an ace king or an ace queen, and he only continuation bets for the most part if he flops something. So he's the kind of guy that'll raise with an ace king. The flop will come, ace 9-4, and he'll make a pot-sized continuation bet. But also, if he has an ace-king, if he raises ace-king pre-flop and the flop comes 7-8-9, he's going to check the flop. So I like playing with players that have that style because they're very easy to put on hands. They don't usually get too tricky. It's you can essentially see their cards most of the time. So he's very straightforward. Anyway, so that being said, I did feel comfortable playing against him in this spot. So he had raised at 12 or to 1,000 with whatever he had. I'll tell you about it later. And the small blind called 1,000. I looked down at 2 red jacks, and I decided to call 1,000. And the flop came 9 high. It was probably, it was a perfect flop for me, like probably 9-6-3 or something. Small blind checks, I check. The original raiser makes a pot-sized bet to 3,000. And the small blind folded. I had about 5,000 left at that point. So maybe I had 6,000 to start the hand, I guess. Anyway, so, no, I'm sorry. He bet 3,000. I had 8,000 left to start the hand. So I did have 9K to start the hand. I decided that he made a big bet here. I didn't think he would bet the pot with aces on such a perfect board. So I got a little stubborn. My gut told me that he had me beat, but I still felt like I could maybe get him off of his hand. I thought, maybe he was bluffing here with an ace-king, or maybe he had 2 10s or something. So anyway, after he had bet 3,000, I went ahead and moved all in. He only had another 3,000, so I knew I was still going to have chips even if I lost the hand. And of course, he insta-calls me with aces. And I was pretty unhappy with how I played that hand. In that situation, you know you can trap your opponent if you flop something and he doesn't, but at the same time, I was upset because I felt like I made a couple bad decisions there, and so I want to talk about what I think I did wrong that hand and what my suggestion to any players would be in that situation against someone who's playing very straightforward poker. Now, there's a couple different situations where I could have gotten off the hand and saved a lot of chips here. The first situation that I could have done is, after he raised it to 1,000, which is a little bit of a suspicious bet anyway, because it is small. Pot size bet, I think, is 14 there, but the standard raise is about 12. He only made 1,000, which is a little small, which oftentimes signals that the player has sort of a big hand. But anyway, so one thing I could have done, after he made 1,000 and this guy called 1,000, I could have re-raised to 3,000. And knowing that if he did have aces or kings, this guy, or even queens probably, he's going to re-raise all in. So if that were the case, I could raise it to 3,000. He's going to re-raise, he's going to fold, and I can just get off my hand, and it cost me 3,000 total. So that's one option that I could have and probably should have done. The second option I could have also called the flop like I did, and when the flop came 9 high and the small blind checked, I could have bet out. I could have bet 1,000, I could have bet 2,000, 1,500. With 3,000 on the pot, my standard bet there would probably be about 1,700, 1,800 in chips. And so I would have bet that, and again, he would have moved all in, and that would have told me that he had aces or kings or queens, and I could have folded my hand. So I was pretty unhappy with how I lost that hand. I got a little stubborn, went against my gut, but again, it's something that next time the situation comes up, I'll be a little more, I'll follow one of the suggestions that I'll practice what I preach, basically, and I don't think that'll happen to me again. But I just was, I guess I was a little impatient because for whatever reason, this guy was just an absolute card rack. He'd turned over aces, kings, and ace-king in the previous orbit. So I just didn't think that, again, he had aces or kings. I just got a little stubborn, but of course he did. And he took me down to about 2,000, which then I ended up going all in pre-flop with an ace-queen versus 2 jacks and could not win a race there. So that knocked me out of the tournament. Finished right before the dinner break. Again, this was the $2,000 pot limit hold'em on Friday. Didn't make it too deep, never really had a lot of chips, but probably played those jacks wrong. Anyway, so let's get on to having our guest on. As I mentioned, I think he's the toughest player in all of poker to play against, in tournaments anyway. And ladies and gentlemen, Mike The Grinder Mizrachi. Grinder, thanks for coming on the show, man.
How you doing,
Glad
John?
to have you here.
Glad to be here.
So we're about halfway through the World Series, and how's it going for you so far?
Well, I probably broke all the records and categories in the World Series. I played probably about 27 events, I would say. Got deep in a lot of events, made day 2 a few times, but it's just as bad as you run. You saw me yesterday. Kind of walked away from the table at 2 aces all in pre-flop and then against 2 tens, and I just knew the 10 was coming. That's how my World Series has been going.
Yeah, that's not too good, but you're coming off a phenomenal year. You won the Card Player of the Year in 2006, cashing over, what, 2.2 million, was it?
That was the year before that. I was close. The year before I finished 5th, but last year, I believe I was about 1.5, somewhere around there, 1.3 million.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about some of the success you've had in the last couple of years on the live tournament circuit.
Well, I've been doing really well the last few years. I mean, any poker player would dream of, doing what I've done in the past 3 years, and I kind of learned my own style. I was always a cash game player. That's how I got the name Grinder. But I figure, people's games. I watch people play. And I said this style won't work for me, and I just figure out my own style where no one could ever figure out.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you, Mike, I consider you to be the single most dangerous player to play against, and I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but you're my least favorite player in all of poker to have at my table. Certainly when you have position on me like you did yesterday. Fortunately for me, your aces got cracked. But seriously, I mean, you're probably the toughest player to play against in the entire poker circuit. And you mentioned that was sort of a game that you adapted yourself. Like what?
Yeah, but it's so different how I play cash games and tournaments. Like you would see why I'm called Grinder when you play cash games with me, because just basically pick my spots and just wait, and just wait for that one hand, and not like a tournament where. In tournaments, you have to be maybe patient, but not as patient as to cash games, because the blind levels move up, as everybody knows, and it's just hard for people to put me in hand. So a lot of people like to play back at me, and that's why I just gather lots and lots of chips. I accumulate a lot of chips, and it's just that my style where no one's used to it, and they just can't figure them out. So they just figure let's just shove it in pre-flop, and we don't have to play flops with you.
Right. It just seems like you always have a hand. It seems like. You play a lot of, you limp or raise a lot of pots pre-flop. You call a lot of bets on the flop. A lot of times you even call bets on the turn. And I know I'm always wondering, what does he have? What does this guy possibly have where he can call a bet on the turn? But I think, I know certainly it's worked against me in the past. I know I've given you chips in plenty of tournaments where I just said, he can't have it every time, and I'm just shove in on you, and sure enough, you have it.
Yeah, it looks like I have it a lot. And just like a Phil Hellmuth, all these guys... a lot of these guys, all these big names, they get like it's such a tight image, and they do play tight. But at certain times they change gears. And people just pick bad spots, bad times when they see the pots are so large. Most of the time they have it, And it's sort of like me, but I kind of play opposite style of poker. A lot of times the small pots I don't, sometimes the big pots I don't. But yesterday I played a real big pot, and I thought I got the guy off ace queen, but at 4 high, just calling him with jack deuce board with nothing, and just playing him off and just forced him to make a big decision on the river. And I thought he would lay down ace queen, but it was my mistake. I shouldn't have took that.
Well, let's talk about that hand for a minute, if that's okay, because I was sitting at the table also, and the guy.
Sure you watched that hand.
I did see that hand. The guy to my right, who you were up against, I think he had raised pre-flop, and you called.
I limped in. I believe he raised early, and I called him with 3-4 high because I know he was probably like he didn't have as much knowledge as anybody else in the game. I think he was like more of a beginner, and he'd probably be an easier person to trap or to bluff. I don't know if that was the right person to bluff because he'd been paying off a lot, but I thought maybe I'll get an image where I should show the nuts a few hands before that with the 6-7 of diamonds. Maybe I can get him off and represent a queen. Or jack, I'm sorry.
So the flop came jack
deuce.
Blank. Okay.
Jack deuce. And
he bet out,
he bet
you
out.
Raised.
He bet out, and I just call him.
That's right.
So I try to represent a stronger hand, like I want him to, bet the turn. Like I don't want to raise him out, so I try to represent a jack in that spot. And the turn came in ace, and I knew he kind of had an ace. But if I lead out, hopefully he'll think there's no way he doesn't have a jack. He can't leave out ace, knowing that I know he has an ace. I don't know if you think like that. That's more my, the way I think. But I made a pot-sized bet, and he decided to call, and the river came a queen. I knew he had ace queen or ace king. I knew exactly what he had. He checked, and I tried to I fired the third bullet, 4,000, left him with a quarter, and he thought for maybe about a minute and a half until he called me, and that put me short. But then I picked it back up to like 4,000 or 5,000, and that's when I got with aces. And that was it. Yeah,
that was. It was a good play. I think that play is going to work against a better player.
Yeah, I think it will. It should work most of the time. But I said to myself, I'm going to make some crazy play when I have like a bigger stack than anybody else, and just take risks. And if the play works, it works. If it doesn't, I'll start all over again.
Well, it's a high risk, high reward type of strategy, but it's obviously worked out very well.
I did have the wheel draw on the turn.
So I see you're wearing Planet Hollywood gear this year during the World Series.
Yeah. Well, I'm currently playing. Probably the first poker player that has their own poker room on the Las Vegas Strip, and it's called Grinder's Poker Room, and we'll have a press release out probably within a month. Just taking photos the other day, and bunch of great guys over there. We have 13 tables over there and 2 Chinese poker tables.
Awesome. And so you'll be their ambassador for some time to come?
I will be their ambassador, yeah, for a way to go, and hopefully we'll have the new World Series over there.
Well, congratulations on that. Do you think that's going to become more of a trend in poker these days with the online sites not doing as many sponsorships here in the U.S.? Do you think the live casinos are going to be coming into the market?
Well, I don't know. I just, I could just say I was fortunate enough, and I got in at a great time. And when my online deal dropped, I picked this up, and it was just a land-based casino. So now I can't actually work with an online casino, but I'm happy. I'm as happy as can be, working with Planet Hollywood, and there are a bunch of great guys over there. And now I'm gonna start running some big tournaments.
Yeah, well, I look forward to playing in some of those over there. Certainly the Chinese poker tournaments, that sounds fun.
It should be July 5th. We should have our first tournament there July 5th. I'm still working on it. But, we got to get a structure approved by gaming. And it'll be a $5,200 buy-in. So we'll see if that happens. We tried it out already and it worked out well. And I finished 6th at 16 players. But,
All right. Well, hey, so I was asking you yesterday at the table what your best finish was in the World Series, if you'd won a bracelet yet. You said my best finish, and you held up 2. And I said, oh, you got second place? You said, no. I said, down to 2 tables? You said, no. 11th. 11th place.
This was my best finish, and it was just actually the tournament I believe Scott Fishman won. That's how long ago it's been in that streak. I probably played about almost maybe 65 events in the total in the past 3 years, maybe a little bit less. I cashed maybe around 13, 14 times. I'm not sure. I tied for the most cashes in 05, but I'm just doing a different strategy where, because in this World Series it seems like the average bet in a limit tournament, the average stack is like 6 big bets. So I'm just trying to get 2 hands instead of 1.
Yeah.
So So I'm not really trying to cash. I'm just trying to get Well, a lot of people say first you cash, then you move, but I'm just trying to have a huge stack when I'm in the money, So I'm taking chances and risks, and I play a little different than anybody else, and when I get deep, I'm gonna have a better chance than they will.
So do you attribute the fact that your 11th place being your best finish is that because these are short stack events, or do you think that's just variance of the game?
No, because I play the short stacks events really. I mean, I won the Mirage tournament right before the World Series, and I know how to play the short stacks really well, and I change myself. It just depends, I adjust my game all the time, It just depends on who's on my table. If they let me play a lot of hands, they play me less hands, If they're easier to trap, if I could just pick spots and you just, play less hands, just wait on that one person at the table where it's going to give away his chips, and I'll do it. But it just depends, and same thing with deep stack, I do play a lot of hands in deep stack where you probably should be, but not as not so many hands, but you can. It's more poker when you play deep stack poker because you can play as many hands.
Right. Well, you have the $50,000 horse event that you're going to be playing in.
Yes.
And then we still have somewhere between 10 and 15, maybe 20 events after that, including the main event. So hopefully it's still early, and hopefully I'd love to see you take down the horse event or one of these other.
Hopefully I don't go for 40.
That would be terrible, but I think you're going to do well, man.
Yeah, I'd rather play the deep stack tournaments, and there's more poker, and it's a better feel for the game, and it's real poker. You could overcome a few bad beats.
Right. Awesome. Well, thanks a lot for coming on the
Thanks
show.
a lot, John.
It's great to have
Appreciate
you here.
it.
Best of luck in the rest of the World
Thanks
Series. Well, that's it for today's episode of Stacking Chips. Make sure to tune in tomorrow and every day throughout the World Series for more strategy talk, discussions, interviews, and more right here on Card Player TV. And keep those emails coming in to stackingchips@cardplayer.com. From John Poker Chip Friedberg
And Michael The Grinder Mizrachi.
we're out of here. Good luck, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.